A Traveler in Time by Alison Uttley. Chapter 7. The long holiday had ended, and Mother wrote that we must return. We had missed enough schooling, but she hoped we had learned some lessons not to be found in books, and made friends with those who never walked the pavements of towns. Indeed we had. Ian's bosom friends were Jess the ploughman, who talked like the Elizabethans, and never went farther than Blackpool once a year, and Jake the gamekeeper. He spent many an hour with Jake, who took him into the preserved woods and showed him the hens brooding young pheasants in hen coops along a green drive. Together they kept watch for poachers, and tracked the foxes, and made a gamekeeper's larder on an oak tree. Certainly the gamekeeper did not walk city pavements. There was the rat catcher, too, a man with many a tale of the cleverness of rats. "You know that rat virus we had?" said he one day when I was there. "Well, it shines in the dark, sort of luminous like herrings' heads. What do you think those darned rats did? They never tasted it. Oh, no, they were too fuss, for it would have poisoned 'em dead. No, they carried it away and put it along their dark passages like lamps so that they had a well-lighted road. I seed it with my own eyes." Alison had different friends, for all the little children in the village knew her. As for me, after Uncle Barney and Aunt Tissy, there were those others, the hidden, shadowy ones, who went about their own affairs in a world unseen by us. But their life was compact with sorrows and joys so intense that I marveled the barrier was not broken down with a flood of their emotions. The air of house and barn was throbbing with the memory of things once seen and heard. We went to the old deserted quarries to say goodbye, to see once more the broken stone huts whose floors were carpeted with the finest grass, in whose crannies ferns hung like green curtains, and over whose walls were tapestries of moss and lichen. We always crept softly up to these relics of bygone days, for we never knew what we could find. Ian expected a vixen and her cubs, or a badger remaking his holt. Alison thought we might see a tramp with billy-can and savory stew of rabbit. We saw none of these. Only the queer, listening silence pervaded the place, as if woodland creatures and dim ghosts were watching us. We visited the meadows for the last time, and I said goodbye to my favorite fields: Westwood, squirrels, meadow doles, and hedgegrove. And as I walked there, I remembered they were Anthony Babington's beloved fields, which he mentioned by name caressingly. There was Betty to go back to Bramble Hall, and Uncle Barnabas said I should take her. I rode her up the long grassy lane, which was a highroad in olden days. Strings of pack horses laden with pigs of lead from the mines in the hills once ambled down this winding lane, and country women rode to market over the crest, with pannier baskets filled with butter and eggs and fat hens hanging by their legs. Further back in history, the shaggy British ponies came there with Roman lead from those ancient workings. Now all was grass-covered. Rabbits scuttered along the path between the black walls, and pheasants cried cuck-cuck as they flew over from the woods. I rode past the little witchwood where the rowan trees flourished and bilberries grew, to the hamlet of farms and cottages. I trotted up to Bramble Hall and drew rein for a moment to look through the gateway at the old doorway. People were walking on the lawn. 2 men were playing bowls. Another admired a monkey which a girl carried. The girl was handsome and petulant, and she tossed back her red gold hair and impatiently teased the little cowering creature in her arms. She turned away to meet a lady with wide skirts of vivid blue who came slowly down the rounded steps from the open door of the house. At the same moment, I saw the farmer come out from the side door and walk across the lawn to put a chicken coop out in the sunshine. Each set of figures kept distinct. Neither was aware of the other, and the farmer walked through them as if they were films of smoke. "Good morning, Penelope," he cried, as he saw me sitting on Betty's back, staring wide-eyed through the gate. "Come to look at the old place. Tie Betty to the ring there by the mounting block and come right in." I obeyed him, and everyone vanished. Neither the lady, nor the red-haired girl, nor the men were there. The shaven lawn was rough, the front door was barred, and moss and ivy grew on the green steps. "We never use the front door," explained the farmer, as I paused before it. "It's rusted up. But sometimes Americans come and want to buy it. To buy my front door. They say it's genuine Elizabethan. Days of Queen Bess, you know. Her has got shuttons of the Armada. Maybe they'd like to take the whole house, for it's an ancient place. But come along in and have a taste of gingerbread. The missus has been baking, and she's a rare hand at gingerbread." I followed him to the side door and through an arched passage to the kitchen. His wife dusted a speckless chair for me to sit down and went to the dairy for a glass of milk. "Thaw cake, we calls it," said she, cutting the fragrant hot gingerbread. "And so you've brought Betty back to us. Have you liked her? Has she been good?" "Ah, she will never forget you. Horses have long memories, better memories than people, I sometimes think." I said goodbye to these kind friends, and saw Betty turned into the field to graze. She raised her head and whinnied as I passed by, and my heart was sad to leave them all. Our bags were packed. There was nothing more to be done, and I wandered into the church. The door was wide open, and I could hear the sounds of cleaning inside. Mrs. Appleyard was there with her pail and brush, and Aunt Tissy was polishing the brass. I helped her for a while, but when she had finished and Mrs. Appleyard had left all spotless, I stayed there. It was very quiet, and I went to the crested pew, the square oak seat where the Babington family had sat so many years before. The clock ticked with a loud, insistent voice, like somebody talking, and little echoes of its iron tongue came from the corners of the church. The bells, the clock, and the chalice of silver I bequeathed to my son. Anthony's grandfather had left it thus in 1558, but the chalice and the bells had gone. Tick, tick, tick went the clock, and the wheels whirred in the tower. There was a flutter of wings as a hen came to the church door, and a scurry of mice in the woodwork. I knelt down to pray for Master Anthony and for Francis, for their happiness wherever they were, and I prayed for Mary Stuart, free at last in another kingdom above that blue sky which I saw from the windows. But I could not think of her as dead. Her face came before me flushed with life, her lips slightly parted, her eyes dazzling me so that I had to lower mine as if I faced a light. I knelt there for a long time, or perhaps it was only a few minutes. But my mind recalled all that I had seen or heard, and the memories of those hidden days came vividly before me. As I crouched in the old pew, kneeling on the moth-eaten carpet, I was so still that a mouse came out of a hole in the corner and sat upright, watching me with beady eyes. Then I forgot all about Anthony Babington, as the little creature played with a crumb it had found. I made a sudden movement, and away it went, like a flashing shadow out of the pew and away. I took out my penknife and pushed it down the hole, but I could not reach the bottom. Then I fetched a twig from the yew tree and scrabbled in the small cavity. The wood was rotten, and I broke off pieces until I could get my finger down. Very hot and red, I fumbled in the hole, half afraid I should touch a mouse's nest. I brought out first a 3-penny bit, which somebody had lost from their collection money. Then I found another object, thick and heavy, coated with dust and mold. I carried it off to the water trough, hoping for wealth, but as the dirt encrusted upon it was washed away, a looped edge came to view, and I saw it wasn't a coin at all. I rubbed it with sand and scrubbed it with a brush, and gradually the thick layer of verdigris and dirt came away, and I saw it was a thin case with hinges. Even then I did not realize what I had found. I opened it with a knife, and stared at the little painted picture sealed under the glass. It was the lost locket, the miniature of the Queen, kept intact in its freshness in the dry boards of the church. Mary Queen of Scots looked out at me, with her carnation held in her white fingers, and she smiled her enigmatic smile, triumphant, as if she were newly risen from the dead. I ran indoors, calling for my aunt and Alison. I rushed to the stable to find Uncle Barnabas. I shouted across the fields for Ian. Nobody else was excited. Uncle Barnabas said it had no value, it was only silver gilt. Aunt Tissy said I could keep it to hang round my neck in memory of Thacker's. Maybe a visitor had dropped it some time. It was only the picture of a lady. "It's Mary Queen of Scots!" I exclaimed, angry at their stupidity. "Can't you recognize her?" They laughed. "How do you know?" they said. "This is an old-fashioned lady and no great beauty. You're too romantic, Penelope." "It is! It is!" I cried. "Look at the carnation in her hand. Look at the initials, M.R. on the outside." "Dear girl, call it what you like," said Aunt Tissy patiently. "Queen of Sheba, if you like. I'll give you a ribbon for it, a green one to match your dress." I must give it back to Master Anthony, I told myself. I waited on the landing. I called, "Francis! Francis Babington!" I walked up and down the rooms, carrying the locket on its green ribbon, looking for a shadow, listening for a faint reply. All was silent, and in no manner could I get over there. "I will leave it with you, Aunt Tissy," I said that night, and I hung it from a nail on my bedroom wall. "I want to leave it, for it belongs to Thacker's." "As you like, my dear," said Aunt Tissy amiably. "It will be here waiting for you when you come back, pray God." The next morning we were up at 6 o'clock and started for the train at 7. Jess brought out our bulging suitcases, which had expanded to twice their original sizes. Aunt Tissy filled a basket with pasties and cakes for the journey, besides packing a hamper of farm produce. "I'm going to be a farmer when I leave school," proclaimed Ian. "Keep the job open for me, Uncle Barnabas." And Uncle Barney promised he would. I loitered upstairs at the last minute, seeking the doorway. "Master Anthony," I whispered, "she's here. I have found your jewel. I promised you should have it, and I can't get to you. I can't open the door to that other time where you are." There was no answer, and I went downstairs. They were calling me. The horse was stamping restlessly. Uncle Barney sat in the cart, and my own stool was close to his warm, milky-smelling knee. I climbed in the cart. Uncle Barney flicked his whip in a curl over the horse. Aunt Tissy raised her apron and began to wave it up and down like a flag. "Goodbye, goodbye," we called, and Aunt Tissy replied, "God be with you, my dears." Away we jolted, along the white roads, past the woods and farms, alongside the talking brook. We looked back, and for a few minutes we could see the white apron tossing in the farmyard against the walls of the old house. Then the church tower, with its broken emblems embowered in its clump of elms, was all that remained. And soon we turned the corner, and we left it behind. With a bit of my heart, I thought. "It has been the best holiday we've ever had," Ian told Mother, when she met us at St. Pancras and bundled us into cab. Our luggage had surprisingly grown, like ourselves, she told us. "I fed the pigs every day and mixed the swill and looked after the hens," I said proudly as the cab rumbled out of the station. "We've brought some of our eggs for you." "I carted them up, and I shot a couple of rabbits clean dead, Mother. They're in the hamper for you. I was going to shoot a pheasant too, but Uncle said I had no game license. Can I have one for my birthday?" "I made the butter for Aunt Tissy," said Alison. "She said it was the most beautiful butter she had ever tasted. There's a patch in the hamper. Do you know how to make butter? You put the cream in the churn. Did you know butter was made from cream and not from milk, Mother?" "Of course I know," laughed Mother, and she interrupted Alice's description of churning and pressing and weighing, of salting and tasting, to turn to me. "You look much better, child. You have changed so much I hardly know you. Such rosy cheeks and such bright eyes. What have you been doing?" "I told you, Mother," I replied impatiently. "I fed the pigs. Penelope was fey, Mother. She spent her time thinking of the Babington family and asking Aunt Tissy questions," laughed Alison. "It was such an old historical house," I excused myself, blushing. And that was all, for there was our own Chelsea Street, with the great Thames flowing near us instead of the wild little brook, and Chelsea Church instead of Thacker's with its tower and haystacks and elms. We settled down to the life of every day, with school on weekdays and the parks on Sundays. We fed the seagulls and did the shopping in the King's Road, and Thacker's went on with its secret life. Sometimes I thought of them all, Aunt Tissy and Uncle Barnabas and Jess sitting in the farm kitchen, and the aristocratic family living their own troubled existence alongside, walking in the same fields, sitting under the oak tree, fishing in the river. I wondered whether Anthony found the Queen's jewel before he went to Paris, and I hoped Francis had not forgotten me. Sometimes they were more real than the people around me, and then they became phantoms, swirling in dim motion, disappearing like the summer mists.